Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Hope y'all are doing well. Hope y'all enjoyed the first overview video. I know we didn't have any gameplay there. Don't worry, those decks are coming very soon, but we had to get this video out on balance changes that are dropping tonight for DC Dual Force. As I've been following along really actively in the main Discord and the creator Discord, I've just been trying to soak in, people have been playing this game for months, I think. Um, and just getting a sense of, what are some of the issues, past like bugs and things like that, that obviously are still getting worked out. Um, what is the take on the meta? What has been needing to shift? What is a little too powerful? We already sort of previewed that in the first video by saying, Batman Wonder Woman's like probably one of the most common deck builds that you're going to see as you play on the ladder. Obviously, it's all unranked, but I think there's some MMR as you win or lose. And I just think across the board, you're seeing a lot of that. Now, there are some other very powerful strategies. There are firepower decks featuring the Joker. I'm actually really excited for that myself once I get the Joker. There are, certain decks that are utilizing Batman a little bit differently than the kind of, aggro tempo style. There are decks that are utilizing Zatanna. There are cyborg control decks, but I think for the most part, Batman and Wonder Woman in their current stage have really been pushing everyone out. And so I've got the balance changes here. Thank you so much to the DCDF team for being able to release this a little bit ahead of time and let the community know. And I imagine in the future we'll be able to do the same thing. So if you're looking to get, the most, recent changes for DCDF, if you're really into this game like I am, definitely feel free to like and subscribe and, follow along the channel. And I will always do my best to get that information to y'all as soon as possible so you can be a little bit ahead of the curve. So, tons of balance changes. I did a little color coding, honestly, just to kind of like help me understand what is changing, what isn't, or how it's changing. Which card pool are they really targeting? And as you can see, there's a little blue highlighter there, which we'll definitely talk about. But also just wanted to shout out the people at Dual Force Tavern. I wanted to have this, kind of handy just to kind of do some card comparisons. And it's been really great that I could just look it up here because I do not have all the cards in my collection. So first things first, let's just dive in. Leader changes. All right. So no surprise, we're seeing Wonder Woman and Batman here at the top of the list. I just think everyone, for the most part, seems to be pretty happy with that. So right now, what Wonder Woman does is attack for 4 power and gives all units, all recruits on the board, rather, +1 health. So they are changing her to, for 2, still same leader charge, it gets +3 power, so -1 attack, and it's only give the recruit in front of Wonder Woman +1/+1. So pretty significant change, right? Not only is she attacking for less, which I think is very relevant. There are many turns where your opponent's able to maybe chain some spells with a Batwing or something else, and being able to, pay essentially 2 leader charge for 4 damage definitely, helped you catch up in certain, in tempo in certain situations. So I think that not only having less power is certainly a nerf, obviously, and going to affect, kind of a level of tempo that you have, but only giving +1/+1 to 1 unit is certainly different than giving all of your recruits health. In some situations, maybe it's a little bit better, right? +1/+1 is obviously better than +0/+1. But the fact that it only hits 1 singular recruit, I think is pretty significant. All right, now Batman, who I think has been the most contentious. So the only change that they're doing here is that they're bumping his health down by 1. I generally have liked that kind of strategy. For those of you who haven't played Magic Spellslingers who are following this channel, there's a lot of similarities in the way that they were trying to tweak different planeswalkers in that game, because its card pools are sort of shared within colors, but they do change. And I think sometimes the best approach was making the actual, whether it's a planeswalker, a warlord, or a leader in this game, when you make them a little bit more vulnerable, and because you're tweaking other numbers, that the -1 health kind of ends up being more amplified than you think. And I'm wondering if that'll be the case. But I think bumping down Batman's health a little bit, it does make a difference. It makes you even that much closer when you have a big firepower turn or a big aggressive turn, playing inmates or something like that, where you can really close out the game against Batman where you potentially couldn't. And the other thing that I think most folks agree is that Batman, because he's able to get those bandages, effectively has much more health than you would think, right? I mean, it's pretty easy to say that Batman's going to get at least one bandage in a game, probably more than that. So he's effectively working with, 22 health, 25 health, 28 health, right? So, -1 health is not a huge change, but I think they targeted a lot of the tactics card pool specifically that Batman was running, and that would be my guess, kind of where they landed on that number. Now, interestingly, I really love the Flash. I've been testing some Flash aggro decks. The Flash is getting +2 health from 17 up to 19. I really like that change. I think one of the Flash's strengths is that he's able to clean up the board incredibly well, but at the detriment that he might take double the damage in some of those exchanges. So giving him a little bit more health to work with, I think, is great because, that group of cards, the green, the energy cards, rather, that pool, like there aren't many ways to heal you, if any. I actually don't know that for sure, but it doesn't seem like there are a ton of great defensive options other than, some of the higher tier cards that have higher health. So I think it's nice that the Flash is getting a little bit more wiggle room to be as aggressive as possible. Now, Lex Luthor, this is interesting. I haven't done a ton of play with him, but I've been playing him mostly with Harley as a way to sort of close out, with an aggressive strategy. So it's still KO a recruit at 4 charges. If they were friendly, sacrifice them to draw 2 cards, and then he gets 3 charges. So that is an interesting change because it used to be 2. So when this hits, live on the server, I mean, I think people will probably be trying Lex a little bit more. I mean, the play pattern's a lot better this way, right? So you get to use that first activation, get some really great card advantage, and then immediately the following turn, you can activate it again. Who knows? Maybe that's even going to end up being more powerful than we think. But having that 2-turn gap from when you might want to kill your own recruit to draw 2 cards and only put 2 charges, I think it does definitely change a bit of the math for Lex Luthor in clearly a strictly positive way. So I am really interested to see where that goes. So those are the leader changes that they're making now. I think it's better to lead more conservatively with the leader changes themselves and look at maybe individual cards that are having very multiplicative interactions with the leaders. I think Wonder Woman's change is pretty significant. Like that, I think that is a big deal, at least in some stages of the game. With Batman on paper, not a huge change, right, when we're looking at that. But let's get into the cards and keep it moving. And excuse my scrolling. All right, with my little color-coded. So Truth and Justice, which generally, if you haven't seen, this is one of my favorite kind of aggressive cards that I got to start with, Truth and Justice. So give your characters +2/+2, right? That gives your leaders permanent +2 throughout the rest of the game and obviously affects everything on the board. Doesn't affect anything in your library or your hand. Interesting change. Now says give your recruits +2/+2 and shield. The fact that this is not affecting leaders anymore, I think, is a nerf. Now, it's better if you have a more developed board to some degree, because you're still getting the +2/+2 on your recruits as you would, but you're also getting shield, which allows you to like really roll over your opponent's recruits. But I think my feeling has been that when your leaders get free, +2, +1, whatever it is, it's usually really impactful. because it basically means that you're almost like pseudo activating your leader every turn for no cost, and they're able to help you push through the damage that you need. To me, this is a nerf. This doesn't feel like we're going in a direction that is trying to, make might stronger. I think this is to gate a little bit of might and really say, all right, your recruits are efficient, they're effective. Let's focus on them. We're not just going to give a blanket effect to your leader in addition to that. Superman Robot, interestingly, went from a 2-2 to a 2-1. I don't really feel like in the community that this card has kind of been talked about or anything. Maybe they're, because they're buffing certain things or nerfing certain things, they're anticipating that Superman Robot might fill like a certain role more effectively as a 2-2 than a 2-1, and that's why they're nerfing him. Doesn't really change much about the card other than the fact that it's more susceptible to Batarang, obviously, or like Harvey, just dealing that 1 damage to clean it up instead of 2. So I would say, like, I don't feel like I see Superman Robot a lot, and now this is probably a reason not to play it even more, at least on paper. Well, we'll kind of see what the rest of the buffs are. And I'm kind of reading this with you guys, by the way. I didn't really do a whole thing before that. I just kind of wanted to go through it with you. Amazonian Bracers now says give a friendly recruit +3 health and aura. I'm going to be real. I don't know what that is. So let's say, okay, Amazonian. So give a friendly character aura and +4 health. So it's being nerfed on health, but you're also getting... Oh, no, it still gets aura. So it's just strictly from 4 health to 3 health. Okay. Haven't seen this a ton. I mean, if it seems like might... where they're trying to kind of like carve out what they're doing is basically like pretty efficient units and maybe like good buffs and that kind of thing. So maybe they're a little worried if they give, more health or more stats for some stuff that's going to be an issue. I don't really feel like I've seen Amazonian Bracers too much when I've been playing, but maybe it's had a pretty high impact with +4 health instead of +3. Okay. I think this is what everyone was really waiting for, is the nerfs to the tactics cards, and specifically ones that revolve around, Batman or those sorts of synergies. So upgraded bandages. So for those of you who haven't got to play this game as much, there is Lucius Fox. Let's bring him up. So he upgrades all of your gadgets, and gadgets are basically free cards that you get off Batman when you activate him, but also plenty of other Batman related cards. Upgrades are really, really crazy, amplified to basically a free card that you're getting at no cost, right? So what the upgraded bandages used to say was heal 3 damage from a friendly character and draw a card, right? Which is just really crazy. In a lot of senses, right? Because it's a free card that is healing you and you're getting another card off of it to replace it. It just definitely felt pretty good. So healing 3 damage from a friendly character and giving them +1 health. I kind of like that because also flavor-wise, it makes a little more sense, right? Like the upgraded bandage, heals 3, but so does the regular one. But now it's also, you get +1 health. I don't know, maybe this changes the math on certain units for tactics, but I just think, like, actually with what you would think an upgraded bandage does, this makes more sense on paper, and also is less powerful, generally speaking, which I think is going to help gate a bit of Batman's power. And speaking of which, Alfred Pennyworth is also changing, which as soon as I saw this card, I was like, wow, that is extremely efficient for a bronze card. So let me actually bring that up, because I shouldn't assume that everyone knows what these cards are. Alfred Pennyworth. So currently, right, 1/1 bronze, so you can play it turn 1. Create a bandage in your hand, then charge your Batman leader. As we know, or I mentioned it a little bit in my first video, charging an enemy leader just tacked onto a card is just very, very good. And so the fact that you're getting a bandage, which could be an upgraded bandage in the late game after you've played Lucius Fox, and you're also getting to charge your leader, is just such a good rate for a bronze card. So now it says, Deploy if you have a Batman leader, draw a card, right? So obviously you're probably going to be playing it with Batman. You get to draw a card, replace itself, and then it says start, create a bandage in your hand, and is now a 2/2, was a 1/1. So this is an interesting way to approach this. So the recruit itself is a 2/2 instead of a 1/1, so that is a buff, right? It's going to draw you a card when it enters the battlefield, which is it's pretty solid. And then if it lives, then it's creating a bandage. So it is interesting. In some ways, this is a buff, right? Because if Alfred lives, you're drawing a card when you play him. He's a strictly better creature, and you're creating a bandage in your hand, which can happen multiple times. But like some of the other cards that I think, struggle, like Clark Kent and some other ones, right? They're just susceptible to dying, right? So whether it's they get to charge their leader and kill your guy, or they play something that's able to chip away at your recruit, it makes Alfred more vulnerable, right? You're still getting the card up front, and a 2/2 that draws a card, I would say generally is going to be pretty decent. There is the edge case that your Batman has died, and when you play Alfred, you don't get the card, right? But it's an interesting way to address the initial burst of not only does Batman get charged, you're getting to heal him, and if it's an upgraded bandage, you're drawing the card anyway. So I think the big nerf here is you're not charging your leader. And again, when we're thinking about tempo and the aggressiveness of kind of how Batman can feel at times, the fact that you have the option to play Wonder Woman and Batman, and you can play what's his name, Steve, right? Steve Trevor. That means you're getting minimum, 3 cards. Because I think, are you able to play more than one Alfred? I think a lot of these cards. Okay, I'm not really sure. I think you can play more than one Alfred, yeah, because it's just a rare. So the fact that Batman and Wonder Woman work, or Batman and another Might, leader work so well together, is you potentially have 4 bronze cards that gave you a charge, which I think is just a huge advantage to that combination. So I think this is a really elegant way, I think, of addressing Alfred. That if he stays on the board, he's going to be better, but he's more susceptible to being taken off the board and not having as much upfront value. Commissioner Gordon just always seemed very, very strong as a silver card. Bumping it from a 3/3 to a 2/1 is definitely a clear nerf, and I think a good way to address it. Part of me wishes maybe he was like a 2/2, because now he's like super susceptible even with evade, right? Because evade doesn't block damage spells, to just obviously die in a battering, to the 3/1 that makes a 1 damage spell. There are plenty of ways to kill off Gordon, but I do think that it was just really powerful to play one card that makes 2 3/3s, one with haste or speed in this game, and evade, right, where you have to double attack it to actually kill it. So it really just had a ton of value. So I think that's definitely a good change. Batman Cape Crusader. Now, I'm going to be honest. I think Batman Cape Crusader, let me actually check which one this is now a 4/4, was a 6/6. If I type Caped Crusader, does it? Yeah, I think I'm going to be real. I don't know which one this is nerfing. Cape Crusader, I think because it has a special name, my guess is it's the ultimate card. So it's a 6/6 ambush hunter hidden after you play a gadget draw card. Now it is a 4/4 that was a 6/6. And on the off chance that I'm wrong, and I wish they had the full names, then this would get nerfed a bit and probably would affect people's wanting to play Bat Signal, potentially. But I do still think Bat Signal is pretty efficient. Again, this is another way of just bringing down the power level a little bit more. And Batwing is now a 3/3 instead of a 3/4. I like that change too. It's not drastic, right? But something you're able to do, obviously, with Batwing when you're playing Batman is just play Batwing and just dump out a bunch of, different gadgets really easily, and it just becomes such a threat. So lots of changes aimed at the tactics pool and specifically, probably cards that you've been seeing often when you're playing against Batman. So these things combined, plus -1 health from Batman and the nerf to Wonder Woman, I think is going to make Tactics Might probably a little less oppressive than it's been. All right, so those I feel like are kind of the major changes that people were looking for, and now we get into stuff that should be interesting to discuss, and I've definitely played these cards a lot less. So Devil's Knight now says give your recruits +2 power. So let me just look up. I know it was plus something. Give your recruits +2 power this turn. Okay, so now this is permanent. Now I remember playing with my partner, who was really she's been loving the game and playing a lot of Harley. I think she had this in her deck, and I was like, well, +2 for one turn is, I guess, kind of swingy in some situations. +2 power permanently as a bronze card, when you're able to kind of dump out a bunch of these, it's like Punchy and Jewel, right? Those are the, does it come out? Yeah, Punch, yeah, Partners in Crime, right? Basically makes 2 units. There are other cards. I think it's the Riot one. Yeah, Gotham Riots, Summon Rioters, which are 1/1s in all your empty spaces, right? Oh, they're right there. That's cool. I love that comes up. Devil's Knight could be actually pretty potent. So that's an interesting buff to the general aggro strategy. Man-Bat is now a 4/1, was a 3/2. I just opened Man-Bat today. Actually, I was really excited to start playing it. So that's interesting. So they're kind of front-loading the power, but making it a lot more conditional to get value out of. So it kind of does, it's very interesting to think about, because Man-Bat, for, again, those who may not know the cards. Where are you? Man-Bat. Oh, it's got a dash, that's why. So it's a 3/2 haste, but at the start, return Man-Bat to your hand. Right, so I think it is, I want to say this is a nerf because it'll come down and maybe you'll get some value, but then it's a 4/1, which is highly susceptible to, for the millionth time, Batarangs, and other 1-damage. Harvey, like, it's vulnerable to so many things in the tactics tree. So this is definitely, I think a 3/2 up front is definitely a better stat line than a 4/1 in this game. I think anything with 1 health in this game is going to be significantly reduced in its effectiveness by the fact that Batman exists. The fact that you can get free Batarangs, that there are so many cards that deal 1 damage, you really can get punished if you're playing too many things that have 1 health. Parasite, I'll be real, I don't think I've played this. Oh, yes, I've seen this guy. He's very cool. Okay, so right now, he's dealing 1 damage to 2 random enemy recruits, gets +1/+1 for each damage dealt. So pretty nice, right? It's going to come in as a 4/4 and pick some stuff off. And so now it says deploy, deal 2 damage to 2 random recruits. Okay, so is this random as well? Yeah, it is. Okay, so they're just amplifying the damage he's dealing, and it gets +1/+1 for each damage dealt, is now a 1/1. So interesting. So they nerfed his overall power and health, but buff the damage, and 2 damage to 2 random enemy recruits adds up. So then it turns into a 5/5. I mean, this looks like a buff to me. It's dealing 1 more damage, but it's got 1 less health. So it'll go from a 1/1, but it'll turn into a 5/5, right? Because it's dealing 4 total damage. That seems really solid for the inmate sort of Arkham strategies. So I would love to open that card. I don't have that yet. And Whack-A-Man, I will say, deals 4 damage to a random enemy recruit, buff to 5. Does this make a difference? I would, probably. I mean, I think Whack-A-Man, I've been trying to figure out, like, because I think it's a bronze card, right? Yeah. I've kind of, I think, run 1 or 2 in my lists. I don't know how big a deal, bumping up the damage is, but certainly, a nice little buff there to some of the kind of like random, removal spells that they get access to. Okay, now moving on to energy cards here. There's a couple other like kind of ones that were like out of color order here, so don't mind that. Lightning Arc now deals 5 damage to an enemy and 1 damage to each adjacent enemy. Hold on. I think this is a pretty big change. Arc. So 2 damage to an enemy and 1 damage to each adjacent. Now 5 damage to an enemy, 1 to each adjacent. So big difference. Going from 2 to 5. I mean, that seems like very, very playable now. I mean, just given the fact that energy is generally setting up firepower, this seems quite potent. You know, often going to be maybe 6, potentially 7 damage as a silver card. That seems like a pretty solid buff. And energy, I think, have some really amazing synergies. And I think most people have either felt they're not quite supported enough in terms of like raw having enough like lantern cards, right, for them to really click, and certain other synergies like that. And so it's interesting to see like how they're going to address that, and we are going to talk about some lanterns right now. So Chip, let me just bring him up again. I'm not super familiar with all of these energy cards. I haven't played them much. Right, so right now it says you may pay a bronze to have Chip and random green lanterns in your hand, give +1/+1 an aura, which is definitely a nice little cheap card. So now it says you may pay bronze to give Chip and random green lanterns in your hand +2/+1, so strictly buff there. And aura is now a free cost and is now a 1/1. Wow, okay. That is quite interesting. So now he costs he costs free. He's a 1/1. But then he gives himself and 1 random green lantern +2/+1. Interesting. It feels like a little bit more aggressively bent, making it a free... Oh, sorry, it's a free cost. Wait, is now a free cost was bronze. You may pay bronze to give Chip. Okay, so that's still staying, and is now a free cost, and is now a 1/1. Huh. Interesting change. Yeah, it definitely feels like more of kind of an aggressive, like, and I guess kind of what they're signaling is like this can be your turn 1 play, when you're playing lanterns. So that does seem like maybe a little bit nicer for how they curve out. All right, Simon. So, right, deploy, you may pay bronze to give Simon and a random green lantern in your hand, +3 health. I kind of like that stat line. I mean, getting a 3/5 is like that stat line usually is able to live and kind of do some work. So it says, now deploy, you may pay bronze to give Simon and a random green lantern in your hand +4 health. But he's now a 4/1, was a 3/2. Okay, so you're able to play essentially a 4/5 that gives something else +4 health. That is a nice stat line when you're paying the cost. So that definitely seems like a stronger card for sure. +4 health is nothing to sneeze at. That really does help you get past quite a few things. Jessica Cruz. Okay, now let me again. I don't know these because I don't have all these cards well enough. Okay, Jessica Cruz. You may pay bronze to give Jessica Cruz and a random green lantern in your hand +3 power. So you're getting a 5/3 once you're paying the cost. Now it says deploy. You may pay bronze to give Jessica Cruz and a random lantern in your hand +4 power. Okay, instead of +3, and it's now a 1/4. Great. So up from a 2/3. So yeah, better stat line, right? So you're gonna get a 5/4 instead of a 5/3, which definitely makes a difference. And then you're getting +4 power on something else. So we're definitely starting to see more of this kind of like aggressive bent really shape up with some of these changes to the lanterns. So I'm interested to see, I don't have Hal myself, but I'm interested to see if they start being able to compete for more of this, like, kind of what it reminds me of for you Magic players is like Landfall, right? Or some other, or like Kicker, right? It's like you could play a card for a cheaper, or I would say Kicker's a better analogy. Play a card for a cheap cost up front, right? Just to play a body early. or you pay more for an added effect. So it's it's a little bit different in this game because early turns, you're only able to play a certain amount of cards, but it's kind of nice that your aggressive cards have the option, in these lantern synergies to buff your other lanterns and maybe play a little bit slower technically, but you're getting more bang for your buck out of your cards. So that's interesting. Solstice, I think I've seen this card a lot. A lot of other players playing it as well. So 5/4, the first time you deal combat damage on your turn, draw a card. It seems like a linchpin in those sorts of firepower decks. Going up to a 5/5 is pretty nice. It's just going to be harder to take her down, and you're going to get more out of her. John Stewart, I forget what his effect is. 3/5, you may pay bronze to deal damage equal to John Stewart's power to an enemy character. Right. So now he's going from a 5/4 or a 3/5 to a 5/4. So he can deal 5 damage up front instead of 3. He loses out on a little bit of health, but because the main payoff for playing him is to deal damage to something and kill it, 5 is a big difference from 3. Okay, Supersonic Sucker Punch, such a good name. Give a friendly recruit +4 power and is invincible this turn, and they changed it to now says give a friendly recruit +4 power and invincible this turn, draw a card. Yeah, I think you kind of needed to do this. These sorts of combat tricks I've really been trying to figure out, just because it's so important for you to have recruits, and I kind of explained this in my overview video. You need recruits to protect your leaders, so you really can't afford to be playing too many spells unless they are A, replacing themselves, which is what this effect would now do, or B, really having a high impact, right? So having this sort of silver card that's okay, the ceiling of this, right, is I give something that's kind of inconsequential +4 power. It allows me to win a combat that's really important, and I got to keep pressing forward. That's okay. That's just the ceiling is not that high, but it definitely gets higher when it's replacing itself. That I think is certainly important for kind of pushing these cards a little bit more to be a combat trick option, as it were. Lasso of Truth also kind of sneaks in here. Now as a free cross was bronze. I think that makes sense when I was looking at this card. Yeah, move an enemy, recruit, and exhaust it. I don't think I really want to play this card in general, and I think making it a free card, maybe for hyper aggro decks or something like that, makes a little bit more sense. Metron, I definitely have played against, is a very cool card. Goes from a 2/10 up to a 4/10. So they're definitely trying to push this card as maybe a better option in the late game, and maybe a little bit more for control. Demos is now a 2/3, was a 2/2. I'll just pull him up even though I know what he does. 2/2 gives something -1/-1. Now is a 2/3, gives something -1/-1. That's a nice little bump. Just kind of a different type of Harvey, right, from Tactics. If I could spell, jeez. Harvey Bullock, yeah, deals 1 damage when it comes in. It's a 2/3, so it's kind of nice that they're just saying, you know what, we've got a 2/3. Although -1/-1 obviously is better than 1 damage. I think it makes sense because I don't see a ton of the Tyranny cards running around, just to kind of equalize their stats a little bit. Shadow's Blade, don't think I've ever seen this card. I really like this change. This one I did read because I was like, I should try and know some of these cards when I do this video. Give a friendly recruit ambush this turn. It's just not powerful enough. But give a friendly recruit ambush and lethal this turn. That is different. So lethal, as you can imagine, if you haven't seen that keyword, is essentially like Death Touch in Magic, right? It's like your lethal damage is just attacking. So if you have a 1/2 and it's lethal, it can kill, a 5/5, an 8/8, whatever it is. So giving ambush and lethal, although it doesn't replace itself, right? You don't draw a card, which is important. This seems like a nice combat trick for some of the aggressive decks where it's you're kind of staring at your board, trying to close things out. Maybe you draw a cheap little 1/2 or a 3/1, and you're well, this is not going to cut it. They've got a Superman or a Batwing or something. Ambush and lethal just means that you're dealing lethal damage and then you don't take damage back, because that's what ambush does. It's like first strike in Magic. So death touch and first strike, pretty good combination as a combat trick. Again, I don't know that this is good enough without the draw card clause to kind of make it in, but it does help push some of those, maybe inmate, Harley or Joker plus Luther strategies. I've been trying that out with Harley and Luther quite a bit. All right, our last card, Indoctrinate. I think this is a pretty huge nerf if I'm reading this correctly. So Indoctrinate now, or before this patch, right, it says summon a silver recruit from your opponent's deck in a front row space and give it guard. So kind of nice. You just yoink something from their deck, give it guard. Now it says put a non-gold enemy recruit into your deck. Very big change, right? This is going from taking something out of the deck and putting it onto your field, giving it guard, so it's kind of annoying that your opponent has to poke through it, to just putting a non-gold enemy recruit into your deck. Honestly, I'm curious, like, this is a huge change to what this card does. So part of me questions, is this worded a certain way? I guess we'll find out when it goes live. But this seems like a not playable card now. I mean, would you... Well, if it reads like, what is it, Stratosphere? Is that what it is? Right? Put an enemy recruit into your opponent's deck, right? It's just bouncing it into their deck. This is put a non-gold enemy recruit into your deck. So you're gaining the card, but you are removing it from the board. Okay, so this just has a very different role now. Instead of kind of putting something on the board, you're taking something off the board. But it has to be non-gold. I imagine that clause is going to make this card just that less, just not as powerful, right? Because you're not going to be able to use it as a removal spell for some of their higher end cards in the late game. But obviously it's going to hit quite a lot. Maybe this actually fills a different role for the Tyranny deck of like an added removal spell, where maybe you get the upside of actually drawing their card and using it. So now that I'm fully trying to process what that means, it's very interesting. My brain is firing on all cylinders today because there are just so many changes as we went through all of this, right? Lots of changes to lanterns, lots of changes to might and to tactics, and plenty of leader changes as well. It feels like, Luther got some buffs. It feels like obviously Batman and Wonder Woman were pretty targeted. And it seems like lanterns, really got some much more punch to them, than they've had. So I'm sure this video is probably long enough. Thank you all for sticking with me. I hope it's helpful, to get this news, sort of hot off the press and kind of walk through this with me. I love doing this kind of stuff. I am still learning the game. I'm playing a ton of it, but I'm doing free to play for the most part. So, I'm not going to really have a full handle on all these different decks. Although I love watching the rest of the community who's been putting up content as well and learning from them. So thank you so much for sticking with me, folks. Those are the balance changes that will be live tonight. I am recording as of 8:15. And it is about, as you can see from my screen, it's 4 p.m. So whenever this hits, I imagine the patch will be shortly following it if it's not already there. So I will catch you next time. Thanks so much.